All right, so we are here today. My name's Colin with my good friend Justin Perez on the Sunshine Sports podcast, and today we're finally going to talk about one of our favorite hockey teams here in the Sunshine State, in the Florida Panthers. Man, it's a pretty eventful offseason. I know that we're going to talk about Bob, we're going to talk about Brady, we're going to talk about mostly all the relevant stuff that has basically gone down throughout this pretty eventful offseason after what was a very injury prone real season last year that you could argue for people that have seen the Odyssey that yeah, this definitely was like Odysseus' journey and how everybody kind of whoever was remaining from that season, it was a miracle that they weren't hurt at all.
No, yeah, well, me, I haven't watched the Odyssey, so I can't speak on that. It's kind of hard for me to get through one movie, let alone a 3 hour one. But who knows if I'll watch it one day. But yeah, yeah, the Panthers, they're coming off probably one of the most difficult seasons in franchise history. Um, I think you could put this right up there with some of the other, injury plagued years in the past, like 2016, 17. And I know for anybody older who's watching, the 96, 97 season or like the late 90s. So, yeah, it was difficult. 541 man games last year lost due to injury. I mean, it was like I wouldn't say we were cursed last year, but it certainly felt like it with all the injuries. Luosterainen in the summer kind of started it off with that infamous grilling incident, that
Yeah.
barbecue incident, whatever that was, and then of course I think the season was pretty much doomed from the start when Barkov tore his ACL and his MCL and missed the whole season last year because of that in training camp. Literally, the first day of training camp. So literally the season was like a train wreck from the beginning. Definitely wasn't anybody's fault. It's certainly a good lesson to have, coming off back to back Stanley Cup championships. You're trying to go for that third one, but hockey's arguably the most physical sport in the world. You can make an argument for that, and you definitely can. These guys, they might tear it up on the ice and all that, but at the end of the day, these guys are human. And we ended up getting a big humbling lesson, a reminder of that last season. But yeah, it's certainly an eventful off season, a whole bunch of moving parts, and I'm ready to go. I can't wait for the season.
Absolutely, me too. As we are now less than a month away from opening night in Raleigh against the Hurricanes. So there's that. But to start off here chronologically before we kind of taper off at the end, but the first move that was made, it was a trade for picks with Mackie Samoskevich. I guess for someone like me, I do like Mackie. I personally, I did get to see him play in Dallas when they visit Dallas back in December, so that was a really cool thing. But yeah, I am sad to see him go. He does remind me a lot of the Owen Tippets, the Justin Sordiff of the world, where before they kind of broke out on the scene, they were just right there in terms of they were just an inch away from putting in the back of the net. I lost count how many times. I know when I was watching the Flying Fluffy hockey streams with Samo, I lost count how many times I've said, man, he's right there. And Jaws said, man, dude, if only Samo can finish his chances. But once that trade kind of happened, it led to the biggest trade I have probably ever seen in terms of. I thought Zito really outdid himself with the Marchand trade, but man, this Brady Kachuk trade, this is definitely something I was not expecting at all. I mean, I was probably like most people where you're expecting Connor Hellebuck to come here and really kind of be the guy, but yeah, I mean, without really getting into too much about Brady, I know they have that podcast, which I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions of, but you know, I like Brady. I think he does have a lot to prove. Obviously, with the playoffs, because yeah, last playoffs for him and the Senators was not great with 0 points. But I kind of look at it like this: as long as he can fit that Mitch Marner role, like what Mitch Marner has in Vegas, Brady Kachuk's really gonna exceed all expectations here in Florida, in my opinion, at least.
No, yeah. Going back really quick to the Mackey Samoskevich trade. Yeah, Mackey for sure. I wasn't surprised to see him get moved in the offseason. Early on, I wasn't surprised to see him get traded because, uh, you know, he's gonna be a good player. I think we can all agree that he's gonna be a good player, and there's a reason why he's a first round pick, and there's a reason why he ended up playing as much as he did, on a stacked roster, especially because on this roster, for a guy of his caliber, a young guy like him to even get a chance to get extended playing time is really difficult. But he's really talented, a really good young winger. I'm excited to see his future in Seattle. But he had to go. I think one of the main reasons why he didn't perform as well as a lot of other hope was because it's simple. It just comes down to the roster. This roster is so deep that it's hard for a guy like that to play only third line minutes, bottom 6 minutes, and produce at a level that a first round pick should. Um, so yeah, so I don't think it was a bad decision, of course, to trade him, and of course that ended up, we did get a first round pick that ended up resulting in the deal that you mentioned to get Brady Kachuk. So it ended up working out, and for it works out for both sides because now Mackey is going to Seattle. He's not going to be buried underneath a insanely deep roster that's ready to contend for Stanley Cup. So he's going to get a lot more ice time, and he'll be able to have a chance to flourish more and showcase what he's capable of and his abilities. It works out for us because now we added another top six player to our lineup. And Brady Kachuk, he's gonna, you mentioned the Mitch Marner. He's gonna be way more than that. I mean, he's gonna be so different. He fits this team perfectly. I mean, he's the brother of Matthew Kachuk, for God's sake. So that obviously is a fit. The chemistry is already there because of that. That family tie of them being brothers, and also Brady Kachuk. He's gonna add, essentially, he's gonna bring more of what this team is known for and what Matthew does. He's gonna add physicality. He's gonna be a pain in the neck. He's gonna bring way more punch offensively now. Leadership, truculence, you name it. Uh, I mean, he can play, and the good thing is that Brady Kachuk, he adds more versatility for Paul Maurice in his lineup. And I don't think a lot of people are mentioning that or realizing that too much, especially a lot of the fans who are caught up in the hoopla of the moment of getting him. Because, you know, obviously the first line I have written down here, we're expecting it to be Verhage, Barkov, Reinhardt, the top line, but Brady Kachuk, if you want to have him at the top line for a bit, you could do that. You want to have him on a second line with Sam Bennett and Matthew Kachuk and basically rain hell on other opponents, you could do that as well. You want to play Brady with Lundell on the third line. You want to switch things up? Why not? So, and we're gonna see that a lot this season too, because of course Paul Maurice does the whole line blender thing, and I'm sure you're aware of that. So especially when things aren't going well. So yeah, so he has a lot of versatility. Power play guy. He probably could be on the penalty kill if needed because he for a winger he's a good face off man. Extremely good, well over 50% in his, most of his career face off percentage. Um, and in power play, like I said, net front presence, or you can have him in the bumper position. So yeah, man, just Brady Kachuk just brings so much. Like he just adds so much more to this Panthers roster, which honestly makes us even more scary.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I do think that power play really, that first power play unit, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be really good. Even though yeah, especially with that, yeah, being in front of the goalie, I feel like there's going to be a lot of like chances to really get the crazy deflections, which Matthew used to do a lot before he broke his sternum, but I guess Brady, hey, he's a lot more physical of a presence down there than his brother Matthew, so there's also that to consider. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the lines always are going to change from opening night to last game of the year. So
Sure.
that's kind of another thing that, while Paul Maurice, I believe he did acknowledge that he did say that Brady was going to start out on the top line, but I don't really expect him to really finish out there by the end of the season. He could, but You know,
Yeah.
it's 84 game season now. So that's another thing
Yes.
we gotta keep. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
84
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
Much as I have to start getting used to saying it's an 84 game season. It's not 82, but to kind of move on a little bit further down before we hit the free agency, fiasco, which all those signings, but it was the Jacob Markstrom trade, bringing back the old goalie. Well, I have an old goalie right here in Luongo, but the other guy that used to be here in the early 2010s, Jacob Markstrom for Evan Rodriguez and Jesper Boquist. But yeah, I feel like once we all knew, it's all of us as fans, that once we saw Jacob Markstrom come to the fray, even though the only little issue that I have with it with Zito is that you gotta get some retention out of that. I know it's 6 years, well, it's 6 million for 2 years, but like you couldn't like just whittle it down to like 4 million or something to that effect. But it's fine. I know they got another guy too, and I believe it was Crookshank, but he's not gonna be a guy of real prevalence. But yeah, as much as I really like to have Jacob Markstrom back, my only thing is, for a guy like that, for a guy at his age, yeah, a guy like Bob, who's 37, soon to be 38 last year, regressed. I know I don't want to say regressed a lot because he still has a lot of good in him. There's still a lot of good Bobrovsky performances in him, but you do wonder a bit, like with Markstrom, how much is in the tank left with these 2 years left in a win now mode that this team is in. But other than that, yeah, it was also tough to see, I guess, a fan favorite, Evan Rodriguez. It is going to be a little bit hard to not see him shoot rats at Marchand at the end of the games, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, Markstrom, definitely a guy that I feel like he also has a lot to prove this year in terms of what he still has left in the tank.
No, yeah, the Jacob Markstrom situation is very interesting. Excuse me. As you mentioned, traded Erod and Jesper Boquist to New Jersey to get him. Obviously, I mean, I'm honestly not surprised that a deal between the Panthers and Devils was made because, just as a quick reminder for people who forgot, but Sonny Mehta now is the GM of New Jersey, and obviously Sonny was an assistant here in Florida under Bill Zito, so I'm not surprised to see them get a deal done. I kind of feel like people are being a little bit too harsh on this trade. I've seen some grades on it, and the Panthers have gotten like a C, while the Devils have gotten a B plus, and I'm like, come on, man, this isn't like a big deal at all. Uh, you know, Rodriguez definitely is he's Erod's gonna be missed. I think everybody in the fan base will agree with that because, he was such a glue guy on our two Stanley Cup teams. I mean, he was one of the pieces that was brought in here to really put our roster over the top, and to really get us over that hump, during our first run to the cup or our first run to the championship, really, in 2024. Obviously, a big Swiss, I call him the ultimate Swiss Army knife because, again, I talked about it with Kachuk, but with Erod, it was even more crazy because he could play up and down, all lines, all positions, left wing, center, right wing. So yeah, it's gonna suck to see him not here, and Jabo too, because Jabo was also pretty productive for a little bit here. I know people are a little bit hard on him, but it is what it is. Bottom six guy, whatever. I'm not gonna put so much stock on a bottom six guy not producing as much as other people put, but it is what it is. But now with Markstrom, this is I think more than ever, this new goalie tandem, starting with Markstrom, is like, this is a huge change, and a new chapter to this era of Florida Panther hockey. Uh, Markstrom, as you mentioned, started his career here, and in 2010. I remember him very, very well here. He was all right, I could say, but obviously, the Panthers back then aren't the Panthers now. So he obviously did struggle here, and he's had a bipolar career, if you want to use that term, because he has had some seasons like in Vancouver where In 2020 he was lights out, great goalie, great starter, 920 save percentage, whatever. But then there's been other years where he struggled, and last year he put up career worst numbers. I wrote it down: 883 save percentage, quality start percentage of 395. So, he struggling. And it's been an up and down career for Jacob Markstrom, and he's been kind of rough uh, ever since early 2025 because he came back from a knee injury too early last year, and I kind of think that he really hasn't been as productive because of that. And also, let's just be honest too, New Jersey's horrible. The Devils' defense is abysmal. Markstrom, I've always said this about goalies. I don't care if you're Jacob Markstrom or Patrick Waugh. I don't care. Like, a goalie is only as good as the defense in front of him. And Markstrom has never really had a defense like this. I mean, this is probably one of the best defensive hockey teams in the last 15, 20 years. You could put them right up there. So I think having a great defense will certainly help Markstrom. And I think that he'll be able to, kind of rejuvenate himself in the rock solid system that Paul Maurice has implemented. And one thing to expect, he and Akira Schmid, which I know we'll talk about later on, they're going to be sharing more time than usual. This is not going to be an ordeal where Bob gets 70 games and our backup is only, he makes like a cameo appearance here and there. It's not going to be like that at all. Markstrom, he hasn't played more than 63 games in a season ever. So expect him to play 60-ish starts with Akira Schmid playing a good majority of the other starts.
Yeah, I was gonna. I guess we'll mention Kira Schmid or Smeed. It's I just know the first names from the movie Akira. Okay,
Awesome, awesome
but
anime flip, by the way.
yeah. So this is kind of another thing too. I guess we as people are gonna have to keep in mind. So there's Cole Schwint and then Akira Schmid. So that way we're not confusing people. But yeah. So Akira Schmid. He was acquired here via trade and was signed to a 2-year, $2 million as an RFA, which that weirdly took very long. He was like the last like guy
Yeah,
to get signed, which was weird. But I mean, hey, you have $8 million invested in these two, so I guess some of my thoughts. I do think even though he's kind of been, I guess, a career backup to this point, especially last year in Vegas, where it was just everybody had a chance until it was Connor Hart that eventually took over. But I do think he is. I think last time I checked, he was 26 to my knowledge, but I do think a little bit part of me does think that he can be a late bloomer since a lot of times it does take goalies to develop very long and very arduous is a word I would describe because it's very much like some nights they look great, sometimes they don't. But I feel like with Schmid, he could be that guy. I mean, maybe not like as the next great successor to Bob because that's a very hard thing to do, but definitely a guy that could be possibly a quality starter in case Jacob Markstrom does not really turn out so well. But this is another thing to where it's like, now with Luongo and his goalie excellence department, a thing that I feel like we got to see more of these goalie prospects start to really
yeah.
fruition, come to fruition here because the only real guy. I'm just gonna just say his first name because his last name is a mouthful that I can't even say. But Krill, the guy who does have the
Roger
Charlotte
Simyak.
Checkers, yeah, he does have the Charlotte Checkers rookie record for most shutouts by a rookie goaltender with four. I think it was four. There might have been one more, but yeah, there's not really a whole lot of these guys that you really are intrigued about. I mean, Krill is definitely the guy that you're most intrigued about because Cooper Black, you're not really too sure like what you're really going to get out of him in terms of is he really ready for the NHL or not. But there definitely needs to be some pressure put on Luongo and trying to build up these prospects and really try to see what he can do with these guys and with really the main guys too now with Markstrom and Schmid.
No, yeah. Going over the draft real quick. Because you mentioned it. Like, I don't really know how much stock to put into our goalie prospects that we have now in the minors because we don't take goalies early. I mean, like early goalie, early for goalies is like second round, maybe third round in some years. Obviously, you don't take a goalie in the first round unless if you're getting, Patrick Waugh or somebody like that, or Roberto Luongo or one of these legendary goalies. Um, but Kirill Gerasimia, Cooper Black, all these guys are like late round picks. I mean, how many late round picks, especially goalies? How many of them? I mean, I'm not no NHL draft expert, so I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that a lot of seventh round goalies have actually flourished into regular starters, or regulars in the NHL in general. I mean, it's hard with these guys. You don't really know. So, we, obviously this past draft, which was very weird, we selected like so many forwards, like wingers, which is odd. I don't understand that. That's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. So hopefully soon we actually invest like a second rounder or a third rounder or whatever the case may be on a goalie because I think that's the one area in our farm system that we desperately need like an improvement on. And Akira Schmid, Jacob Markstrom, this tandem, they're more like stopgap options because Markstrom, I think you mentioned he's on a 2-year deal, right?
Yes.
2-year deal, yeah. So 2-year deal, he has 2 years left. He's an unknown. I'm confident. Listen, I'm confident. Listen, Bill Zito has, I think he's earned all of our trust. He's earned it. So I'm not gonna sit here and I'm not gonna, pout and panic. Oh my God, Markstrom, he's not very good. Because like I said, you don't know how he's gonna be here with the team that we have. But they're just stopgap options. So you want to be able to have a legit, I guess, top goaltending prospect in the minors developing, unlike a bunch of these seventh round picks. Because, like I said, you just don't know if they're going to be anything. So, now going back to Schmid, um, 2-year deal, traded from Vegas. And of course, we ended up signing him. I don't, like you said, I don't know why that took so long. That was like the last move of the off season. And we were waiting on that before even doing this, let alone. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so he's gonna be the new backup. He's our new number two. So goodbye, Daniil Tarasov. In steps Akira Schmid. Uh, as you mentioned, late bloomer, and I 100% agree. Uh, does he have the best numbers? No, but last year was his first legit full year in the NHL. Um, I think he had over 30, just over 30 games played last year. So he knows the ropes, and now now he's playing in Florida. I'm not gonna say that he needed to change his scenery because Vegas was also a pretty good place to play. Obviously, Vegas is Vegas, but still, you never know with him. And the one thing that I like about him, and this is what a lot of people have said, is that he has great composure. He doesn't get flustered or intimidated by the moment. And I think you need that, especially at the goalie position. I think you need a guy like that who's not erratic, who's emotionally structured well, I guess you could say, who's calm, composed, because, you don't want to have a goalie, any goalie, with the complete opposite mindset, with an erratic mindset, 'cause that'll just screw up everything. But yeah, he has great composure in high pressure situations, and he's also big and athletic, 6'5". I mean, he's a big body, so I'm sure we're gonna see him make a lot of big saves as a backup here this season. So yeah, I'm excited. Not really much to say on Schmid other than that, because like I said, he's again a late bloomer, late 20s, but you still don't know what he is yet. So now we're gonna really see what he could do here in Florida.
Yeah, I think to add on to what about your draft and how they've taken goalies every year in the seventh round, I still think this is true because I think this was a Dale Talent move, to my knowledge, if it's correct. But Spencer Knight was like the last
Yes.
goalie that they took
Yeah.
with high draft capital on, which it's funny. I know a lot of people don't like Dale Talent, but Spencer Knight, no one has yet
No.
to not ever since Zito took over and Luongo, no one has been able to match up to the potential heights of Spencer Knight, which I've always was a big Spencer Knight guy. I wish him nothing the best in
Yeah.
Chicago, but there's gotta be you gotta like start putting in more draft capital into that. But I guess
For sure.
now we're off our I guess our rant about goalies and what how it's got to be. So I guess the first more interesting move that they made when free agency started was bringing back I guess another old Panther in Radko Gudas, which I do like Gudas. I do very much enjoy his play style, even though yeah him with my Austin Matthews, that's you can't do that, you can't. But um, other than that, I mean, I like the money. It's very cheap. What I don't like is the term. It's 6 years. I mean, okay, 6 years of good is okay. That's really all I can say. Is just, I mean, other than that, I think this is I want to say the sixth or fifth captain. And I know Gudis wasn't a captain when he was in Florida initially, but since he's coming back now, this is like the fifth captain that the Panthers have gotten. I want to say ever since I forget which year, but it was a year that like Thornton came here, and then it was like Claude Giroux, and then it was like Kyle Okposo, and now it's like Brady.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have all the names. I had it written down in like,
Like 2019 starting with Joe
yeah,
Thornton, like 2019, 2020 season, the COVID year, I think. I think it
yeah,
was
but
that year.
it's an insane trend that has continued for this team as well. So that's another neat, interesting thing to look at for this team.
No, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, before I get into it, Radical Gudis, welcome back home, man. Seriously, like Radical Gudis, the butcher. He's obviously he was only here I think like from 2020 to 2023 the first time, but quickly has become one of my all-time favorite Panthers. I don't, and I'm sure a lot of people can say that as well, uh, because I just love guys who just put the fear in God and other players. So you know, listen. Being a Panther fan for almost my whole life, I could say that we've been bullied before, like a lot. So let's bully back. I don't care. So I'm glad to get guys like Radko Gudis in the building. I'm glad that he's returned. Like but like you said, I think the main thing is of course the contract. Me personally, it's the same thing with Brad Marchand. I mean, isn't his contract what like 7 years, or didn't he sign like a big
It's 6 years, I believe, as
six,
well.
7 years, something like that for again a veteran, a guy well into his 30s, just like Gudis, mid 30s, right? Um, so obviously that's something, of course, that it's natural to be concerned about, the long term, but I don't think Gudis is gonna get through this contract. That's number one. I don't think he's gonna play all 6 years. Same thing with Marchand. I don't think he's gonna finish this contract. Now I don't know the cap ramifications. I don't know if there's gonna be some type of penalty if they retire early, because it's not like it was a Roberto Luongo type. I don't know if you remember, but remember when we got Luongo from Vancouver, when we brought him back and he had that ginormous contract, and when he retired early, the Canucks had that massive cap penalty. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that. No, yeah.
I
So
vaguely remember that, but I knew. I think part of the reason why he retired too was it was his hip, right? It was like,
no, I mean, yeah, he just he got old. He got old. I mean, he was 40, I think, when he retired, 39, 40 years old.
yeah,
Like, but yeah, so I don't think we're gonna have those ramifications, because it's not that lucrative of a contract. Again, I'm not an expert on that, so if any of you down below can correct me, if any of you watching this, that'll be great. But yeah, but as far as what Gudis brings, just again, he's gonna cover up that sixth defenseman role. On the third pair with Dmitry Kulikov, so that's gonna be a dope, badass third pairing, Kulikov and Gudis together. And again, you mentioned it. We keep acquiring captains. Why not? It brings more leadership, dude. The more leadership, the better. You want a locker room that's gonna be composed, that's mature, that knows what situation they're into. You don't want a team that's panicking. And one of our biggest trademarks, or biggest traits of this dominance that we've had in recent times has been because we've been one of the more mature and composed teams in the league. This team doesn't panic. And we've seen it time and time again. Playoff series, They come back, the Toronto series, in the second cup year, the second, the back to back adversity, staring adversity right in the face. They come back. So this team doesn't panic. So you want to bring as many guys like that in the room as possible. Gudis is that type of dude. Tough, physical, shutdown defense, depth, shot blocker, great penalty killer, can fight, hit. I mean, how do you not like this guy? Like he's just gonna come in and he's just gonna keep adding to what we're known for, and he's motivated to win here.
No, absolutely. But I guess continue on with the defensive pairs. Now it's more of an interesting battle for that seventh D spot because they did bring back Donovan Sabrango. I know not a lot of people are the biggest fan of Sabrango. I do think he can be something. He does have a year's worth of NHL experience now with this team. Obviously, it's going to be an interesting battle in camp between him and Uvis Balinskis since he's on the last. I believe Uvis is on the last year of his deal as well. So it's going to be a very compelling, battle who between those two, who's going to really get that spot. But I mean, if you ask me personally, I really think that they're both going to remain on this team because I don't really think they want to lose Donovan Sabrango to waiver claimers at all. But it's going to be an interesting battle there because, obviously one of the things that I'm very much for this team doing is infusing a lot of that, young talent in there, which with guys that I know we'll mention later with Cole Schwint, Vilmanis, Sabrango, and if it has to be John Beecher too, sure, why not John Beecher?
No, yeah, that battle for the seventh spot, it's gonna come down to Sabrango and Balinskis. To be honest with you, I'd prefer Balinskis just because, you know, he's been here longer and he has had success playing. It's not like it's not like he's something to sneeze at. I know that when he's been in the lineup, I feel comfortable with him in there. I've always felt comfortable with Balinskis. I think he's great. I think he's the perfect depth defenseman for us, and he's certainly somebody that I value a lot and somebody that doesn't get a lot of recognition. So I'm giving it to him now while there's an opportunity. Um, Same thing with Sabrango. I think Sabrango, regardless if he's seventh or eighth on the depth chart, I think him being here last year is going to help him get ready for this upcoming season. He knows now the system. He knows what this room is like. He knows what this organization's like. So, the fact that you bring him back, it's great. Again, you can't have a championship team without depth. To me, depth is other than your star players, other than having talent, top end talent, depth is the second most important thing that every championship team needs. And that's exactly what these guys bring. They're not going to be, of course, they're not stat sheet stuffers. They're not going to make a lot of plays that get a lot of attention, but they're always good to have around. So I'm very happy that they're back, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen with both of them. Either way, they're going to be mostly on the bench for Gudis, but I know for a fact that if anything happens, either of them will be ready to step up and contribute.
Absolutely. I mean, that's another thing too. I guess I'll be interested to see is that bottom pair of how many guys are going to rotate out. Because I mean, for what it's worth, Kulikov and Gudis, yes, they're not the fastest things in the world. They're not Sonic the Hedgehog fast, but if they needed a night off, that's another thing too, where one of these guys like Uvis can give them a night off or Sabrango. But it's kind of another thing we'll keep in mind because that's going to be a theme through the four, some of the bottom six too. Bringing back a guy that I feel like me and a lot of other people are very excited to see back here because the potential he does have, despite how some people I don't know why some people really rank this guy as not a very high prospect with Sanders Vilnius, but sure, whatever. But yeah, Sanders Vilnius is back. Thank God. I really do like this guy a lot. 2 years at 925K. Um, Obviously, yeah, I really hope that he does make this team. There's no way he does not make this team. He is way too good to be in the AHL, in my opinion. Um, in terms of his role, I mean, yeah, he might be a fourth line guy, but I also would like for him to see what it's like for him to play third line mids, especially to help reduce the minutes of a Brad Marchand, since yeah, as great as Marchand is, you gotta make sure that his minutes are not over, or not really over. I guess really over 20 minutes for him, really, because yeah, or else those injuries that are gonna are gonna appear for him. Honestly,
No, yeah, absolutely. And Sanders Vilmanis, again, same thing like Balinskis. You gotta love the Latvians, right? It seems like they have the best depth players for us. So shout out Latvia. But yes, Sanders Vilmanis, 19 games last year. What is he? 23, 22, something like that.
yeah, he's
22.
very young.
Yeah. So he's I mean, he's 2 years younger than me, so so the potential for him, I don't want to over exaggerate because again, we don't know, but he looks good. He looks good, man. He looked good in his audition last. I think he played 20 games last year, or 19 games, or something like that. Sanders Vilmanis, he's like you mentioned, way, way, way too good to not make this roster at the end of training camp. I think he solidified a spot for himself with how he performed last year. Uh, Fourth line, that left winger role, and I know we should talk about this a little bit later on, but that fourth line with a couple of newcomers in Lars Eller and Garnet Hathaway, so the left winger role is open. It's gonna be again same thing in competition in terms of the seventh defense. We're also gonna see competition in camp. For the fourth line left winger role between Vilmanis and Jonah Gadjevich, who of course missed almost all of last season with the neck injury. Hopefully he's all right. By the way, I'm hoping that he's through with that neck injury because that was brutal. That's not good. Um, but yeah, man, he's good. Like small sample size, you really can't, you know, put a finger on what he can do except, excessively well. We gotta see him play more, but yeah, as you mentioned, he's gonna make this team, and you mentioned the whole thing with Brad Marchand, and I didn't think of that to be honest with you, but that's a very interesting, train of thought from you, and that's honestly a possibility now when I think of it because. Marchand, of course, like we mentioned, he's in his well into his 30s. He's in his mid 30s, and this team is gonna make the playoffs. They will. Like unless if they have no, they will. No cross. They will. They will. Like
As
unless if
long as there's no
yeah.
no
The
no, no
only the
barbecue
only
incident, no
the
broken finger after a weird deflection. Yes,
The only thing that's stopping this team from making the playoffs is what happened last year, injuries. This team is making the playoffs, and they're most likely gonna, unless something crazy happens, they have a huge, huge chance to make a deep playoff run again. At least get to the Eastern Conference Final for probably a likely matchup with the Hurricanes again. At least early on, early prediction. But so as the season goes on, you want to be able to at least give some of your older guys a little bit of rest, especially, if you're well into playoff positioning late in the season, like in March or whatever, or early April. So depending on how he performs, he could definitely see some third line minutes. So because of his youth, because of, how young he is, I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Maurice gives him some opportunities on the third line, give him some more ice time during certain parts of the season, especially, if guys need some rest, like a Marchand.
no, absolutely. I guess another guy too that I'm also a really big fan of is Cole Swint. I'm very happy to see him back here
Yeah.
in Sunrise. I understand. Yeah, he had that again another ridiculous injury that put him out for the majority of the year, and then he came back towards the end. But I definitely think if whatever reason Lars Eller doesn't work out or whoever, Cole Swint can honestly like be the 4C of the future. Honestly, I've been saying it. I know Jaws has been saying it. A couple other people have been saying it. But this guy, if they really do develop him, which it is funny how it's a lot of irony in a full circle moment of he was the guy that got us Matthew Kachuk, but he's also the guy too since he came back here can really be that 4C in the future. I truly do believe that as long as he stays healthy. But he's another guy that I'm very much interested to see what his role is going to be like on his team too. And I guess to add on to another guy too that I am a big fan of. I do like what he's done so far in his career. And John Beecher, I know he was a Bruin for a little bit. Last year was on the Flames, but I definitely think both those guys right there. I mean, they're both way too good for the AHL, and they should make this team. I mean, if anything, if you want to move down Cole Reinhardt to the AHL level, okay. I'm not gonna. I mean, look, his 40%. I think it was a shot percentage, right? Yeah, that's not gonna be a theme with that guy. I know we joke about him as Timu Reinhardt, but yeah, no, that 40%. There's no way that's gonna continue on throughout his career. Absolutely no way.
No, of course not. And that's just the product of a small sample size. It's almost like in baseball with a young pitcher who comes up from the minors for the first time. He has that one good start, or a couple good starts because the opposing batters don't haven't faced him yet, and he has a great, but that's not going to be the case throughout the rest of his career. Uh, so yeah, but Cole Schwint, again, same thing as Vilmanis last year. I like what I saw from him. Similar type amount of games, 20 something games, and as you mentioned, obviously one of the pieces that we use to get Matthew Kachuk. So it's a full circle moment, which I think is kind of funny. It's kind of amusing. But yeah, hey, he's another guy, that could come in, step in, and be productive on a at a fourth line role. And like you said, if they keep developing him, then I don't see why he wouldn't be a solid quality bottom six winger in the NHL. I think he has the tools. And remember he also played 40 something games with Vegas the year before he came to us. So he's dipped his toe into the NHL water a little bit. He's gotten some experience. Um, and in that time he's certainly been productive. So, like I said, earlier, same thing with Vilmanis. I'm happy that Schwint is still on the roster. And to be honest, we're definitely going to see him a little bit this season, especially like I said, if a guy has a knick-knack injury here, if he has to stay out, needs to get some rest, he'll come back in. Um, and he'll solidify, the bottom line winger role for a night or two. So yeah, so I like him. I don't know too much about John Beecher, quite frankly, because he hasn't been in our organization, so I haven't seen him much, and he hasn't had a large sample size. Again, another same age, both Schwint and um, Beecher are 24. So you know, Beecher doesn't again same amount of games, hasn't had a lot of experience, has a taste of it, but we'll see what he could bring. But there's no doubt that they're two quality depth pieces for sure. Beecher, of course, a great addition because he's adding depth at center. So let's see what they could do.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to cover the other Panther signings, it kind of like reminds me of the other Cavaliers ad way back in the 2010s with the Cavaliers teams.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, I guess they do bring back Alex Petrovic, which okay. I mean, he's gonna be playing the AHL. Like I hate to say this, but it's true. But he is a career AHLer guy. That yes, he did play in the NHL for the Dallas Stars, but he's not. I mean, look, if this team has to go to Alex Petrovic, something's gone wrong. Okay, I know that you got another guy from the Penguins who he was in. I think yeah, I
Ivana.
do remember this very distinctly. He was in like one of the like best fights of the AHL last year. I don't know what team he was on, but I know the team that he was playing against was the Manitoba Moose. So that was a pretty cool fight to see. He's probably going to be in there for those Tampa Bay games in the preseason. So
Probably.
that's probably his moment in the sunshine to do something cool. Um, let's see, if there's anybody else of worth noting.
Lars Eller, and Garnet Hathaway. We got to talk about them because they're going to be big focal points this year for sure on that fourth line.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, Halfway. I'm really not so sure about him. I mean, Lars. I know he's gonna play. I know that they like these guys. Like they try to resurrect their careers like they did with OEL and Nate Schmidt, right? Because it's all these people with the same names. But I'm very like optimistic slash I do have a few of my concerns, especially with last year and the whole Jeff Petrie thing. And every time I had to hold my breath because Jeff Petrie was on the ice. But yeah, I mean, Hathaway, he's a very physical guy. That's really about it. He's a very physical player. I don't really have a lot to really say about him. Um, Lars, I know he's a center. He has a pretty good face-off percentage to my knowledge, but I'm not really like
Really good.
so crazy about those two because I want the younger guys to play more than the older guys. But I understand that these two guys are going to play. They're going to have a big role in this team on the bottom six lines.
No, yeah, of course, the young guys, they're gonna play soon. Zito is gonna let these guys play. They still need some development. The guys that we have down. So again, stopgap options, and you know, you look at Lars Zeller and Garnet Hathaway. I know they're not the two biggest names, but they do add tons of value to this roster. They really do. First, starting off with Eller, as you just mentioned, great face-off guy, and I mean he's just off the charts. He's a god in the face-off dot. He really is. I mean he's just I wrote it down. He in 7 of his last 8 years, he's won over half his draws. Uh, you know, he kills penalties. He takes critical defensive zone faceoffs. We needed a fourth line center. We needed a veteran. We needed to fill that fourth line center role, and I think Larzella is the perfect candidate for that. Again, we go back to what we said about Radko Gudas. He's a veteran in his late 30s. He's been in the playoffs. I wrote it down. What's his measurement here? Yeah, right here. I wrote down adds playoff experience like 100. He's been in he's been in the league 17 years. 13 of his 17 years he's made the postseason.
I'm
Stanley
pretty
Cup
sure.
champion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
what?
2018, right at the Caps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
that's a
yeah,
notable thing I did forget about.
a Stanley Cup champion with the Capitals in 2018. He's been there before. He knows what it takes to win. 116 career playoff games. Like I said, great face-off guy. He's gonna be a critical component to our penalty kill. So keep an eye out for him for all the fans at home. He's gonna play a big role in our PK this year. And like I said, just crazy face-off guy. Reliable two-way game. His offense used to be pretty solid. Now, obviously, he's older, so his offensive numbers have dipped. And obviously, as a player ages, his role changes as his career moves on. So Eller used to be more of a solid two-way bottom six forward. Now he's strictly more of a defensive guy. But that fits, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So really excited. And again, it's a 1 year bridge deal, not expensive. You know what you're gonna get. I like the signing. I'm really happy we got him. And in terms of Garnet Hathaway, we traded for him Philadelphia for I think it was a few picks, a few draft picks, nothing crazy, like I think a fourth and a third or something like that. Interesting note about Hathaway. He's on, I think, the last year of his contract, but Philadelphia is retaining 50% of the
That's right.
2.4
That's
million
right.
owed to him. So that's critical because obviously Bill Zito showing that he's playing Tetris with the cap, the salary cap. So a smart move to entice Philly to keep half of his salary for this year. Hathaway, in terms of what he's gonna bring, he's gonna fill the void left by AJ Greer. Of course, AJ Greer, we traded his rights to Anaheim for Gudis, and while Gudis signed here in Anaheim, Greer signed, or while Gudis signed here with Florida, Greer signed with Anaheim, so he's gonna fill that AJ Greer void. Brings in more grit, more physicality. Can't have too much of that. 66 games last season, 252 hits. So he throws the body like there's no tomorrow. Um, he has experience playing on rosters with Matthew Kachuk and Sam Bennett because he played in Calgary, and he also played in Boston. So he has some relationship with Brad Marchand. And I watched his introductory press conference because I was interested to see what he had to say. and you could tell that he values the idea of camaraderie, of brotherhood. And that's exactly what this Panther lineup, what this Panther team has built themselves on. A strong connection with each other, a strong brotherhood. So that's exactly what Hathaway's coming into. So he fits the type this locker room is perfect for him. So he's gonna fit in well with this team, and both Eller and Hathaway, they're gonna be really really good here in Florida, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I mean, you brought up brotherhood, and there's no. I feel like this is a great time to really mention about how, yeah, there is a new pair of brothers. Supposedly, I'm like pretty sure that he is related to Anton Lundell, but Lundell's brother is signed with the Charlotte Checkers, so it's a pretty cool aspect. I guess another cool aspect too is with now Matthew and Brady. It's like, man, we got this team, man. It's full of brothers, man. You go back to with the Kachuk brothers, the Stahl brothers, Pavel Bure and his brother.
Valerie, yeah.
Uh, there's like a few more I'm missing, but I know I saw a post on like Panthers, I guess report. They made a post about this, about the brothers that have been part of the Panthers organization throughout the years, and I thought that was pretty cool. You know, like it's something you don't really think about a lot, but it's something that you're like, you know, it's an interesting, notable fact to bring up.
No, yeah, I just out of curiosity, I looked it up. I'm sure there's a couple more brother combos or tandems that have played for the Panthers, but yeah, the Kachucks, the Bures, and and even for a brief time, Adam and Jesper Boquist. So it's
That
kind of
was the other
funny.
one.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of funny, that we have another pair of brothers. But yeah, me personally, I had no idea that Anton Lundell had a brother, but I think that's more because, well, quite frankly, unless if you're a hockey nut psycho, I'm not like most of the time you're not gonna know because I don't think many of us Americans have the time to sit and watch hockey games from other countries that are going on during times when we're asleep. So, so yeah, I had no idea that he had a brother. Casper Lundell, he signed a two-way AHL contract. So he could be on the roster. I doubt he's gonna play. Maybe I mean he might get some preseason time. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe as like a little publicity stunt with Anton. Maybe like they'll probably play like 10 minutes in a preseason game together. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's kind of interesting to note. And like I say, I'm not against it. I mean, look at what Anton Lundell has turned into. If the Panthers feel they can develop him and get something useful out of him, then I'll take it. I'll be happy to accept another Lundell on the roster, brother or not. I'll be happy to. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess we kind of cover everything. So I guess a few things that I do want to, I guess for the future videos that we are going to be making. Excuse me. So tomorrow will be the recap for the Marlins with that freaking Brave series and the Mets. Next week, I guess, will I will say this because I really am happy to really say this, but we will do our first video discussing about the Miami Hurricanes with college football just being right around the corner. I know for a lot of people starting to get around fall camp, the first days of fall camp, first days of pads, it's a great time because we're right there. We're almost there to football season. I know there's the NFL Hall of Fame game tonight, but I'm going to be quite honest. I'm not going to sit here and fully watch an entire game of Carson Beck versus Kenny Pickett. I'm sorry, but that's not worth my time for like 5 minutes. I'll say that. But other than that, yeah, so these were the moves that the Panthers made. As always, you know, please like, comment, and subscribe to the Sunshine Sports podcast. Very much appreciate the support throughout not only the shorts that I have made for the Marlins recaps, but the videos too for that we have done this far into the season with the Miami Marlins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we sign off here, yeah. By the way, if people are saying that they watch the preseason like that, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. NFL preseason is so boring. it's funny to watch at times because you see some of the most hilarious, awful football you'll ever see. But anybody who's saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna watch the game," they're lying to you. They'll have it on their TV. They'll probably watch the first couple of drives, but they're not gonna be tuned in to more than that. They're gonna be on their phones because I've done it. I'm just as guilty of it. So I can tell from experience that nobody's gonna watch the Hall of Fame games as religiously as they say. But yeah, yeah. So next week we're gonna be back at it with the Miami Hurricanes season preview. I can't wait for that because, like you said, fall camp is starting. I'm pumped up. I'm pumped up. This is the most excited I've ever been for a Miami Hurricanes football season and basketball too. But we're gonna get into that later on, maybe one day. But yeah, football. Can't wait. So we're gonna get into that. But yeah. So yeah, it was great. It was great being here with you today, Colin, and so all the viewers out there, thank you for watching. And until then, we'll see you on the flip side.
Yes.